everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So Cognitia provides all the technology trainings. Cognitia is a Microsoft partner. Today's webinar topic is decoding the DevOps, the best deployment practices. So nowadays DevOps is a buzzword. Why it is a buzzword? Because earlier the way development was happening, every team was independently working. They were not aware what is happening in other team. But nowadays what is happening is, due to this a new term or a new culture, we can say, as a DevOps. Now this DevOps team is continuously in touch with all these three different teams. So now there is a proper communication between all these departments. So due to that, what is happening? Every team is aware about what we need to deliver, and every team is also aware about what we are going to expect from the other team. Due to that, there is a proper communication happening between each team, and that is helping the overall product to deliver faster. Nowadays there are a lot of DevOps tools are there, so if we use that tool, that is helping us to speed up our overall product development. Now what is DevOps? Okay, so DevOps, if you just typically see the definition, you can say it's a series of process and tools as well as the cultural practice within a company. So this is a technical definition, we can say. But if you generally talk what is DevOps, so DevOps is a simple, we can say, automation. Earlier without DevOps, everything was manual. Like developer will come up with some, means developer will get some requirement, he will develop his, he will write the code. Okay, once the code development is done, he will give that to the QA department. They will test it. Once that is done, if there is any problem, they will come back to the development that we have this problem. Again developer will work, give it to the QA. If everything goes well, it will go to the next stage. So this is like one by one sequential process, we can say. And there was no triggering point like, okay, developer are done, now we need to do start. Okay, there is no one, once until unless developer is not telling the QA that okay, I am done, and they take this code and you can start. So this is all manually was happening. But what we are saying is DevOps is automation. So here we don't need to do, means we don't need to tell anything to any other team member. We have to just finish our work, and if we just commit that code somewhere, automatically the next department will get to know that this is what we need to do. And for them as well, they also don't need to do anything manually. Okay, automatically they will have some processes defined. According to that, they will start work. Okay, so let me just draw one diagram here that will give you a clear understanding. Developer is what developer will do, he will write some lines of code. So once it writes some lines of code, what it will do, it will push this code to some source code management, SVN. Okay, there are some lot of code management tools are there. So as soon as this developer push this code to the source code management, okay, that whatever the repository we have, once that code is pushed, means automatically we'll got to know that okay, there is some new code is coming. Okay, as soon as that new code is coming, there will be someone who will copy that source code on some build server. Okay, we'll have some build server. So on this build server, code copy will happen. Once code is done, next thing is we need to build this code. Okay, so on this build server we'll build this code. So now depending on what programming language we are using, that build tool we can use it here. Okay, let's say I'm using C or C++ here, then I can use CMake or G++ we can use to build this particular product built from C or C++. If you are using Java, then we can use here Maven, Gradle, or some other tool, whichever we use generally to build the Java code. So similarly, depending on your programming language, on a build server, we can use that that particular tool, build your product. So once build is done, what we can do, again we can, whatever the build code is, the final jar. Okay, if it is a Java application, final jar we can pull it on some test server. Okay, so we'll have some test server. So on this test server, already QA will write their test cases, few test cases, and they will put it on this particular test server. So now once the build is done, we'll have that package of your product deployed on this test server, and then whatever the test cases are there, those will be run on this particular product. So now once this is done, automatically depending on whatever the result of the test cases, okay, if something goes fail, we can automatically inform that to the developer that okay, there is some problem, or this is XYZ test case is failing. So this is what we are calling, okay, we'll detail process here, but the main thing that we need to understand is here everything is automatic. Okay, we don't need to involve any manual intervention here. Okay, so everything is automated. So this automation is nothing but our DevOps. To automate all the process from start to end, that is nothing but our, we call it as a automation. Okay, and the DevOps is nothing but this particular automation. So I hope everyone understood what is DevOps. So now typically what type of a revolution happened. Okay, so as just now we talked about, everyone was working independently. So this is something without DevOps was happening. So every DevOps, QA, operation team, business intelligence team, so everyone was working independently, and people were hesitating to share what is there with them with some other team. So that was happening, or we call it as a silos. So this was happening before we don't have the DevOps team or that type of concept. That time this is what was happening. Then after some recently we came to the concept called DevOps. Then people started interacting with each other. So here, whatever the intersection point you can see, so this is nothing but the job of the DevOps guy. He will interact with each and every team and will make sure that everyone is on the same page, so that everyone will be aware like what is required for the QA. So that will be informed to the dev team, and this DevOps guy will make sure that all the processes and all the whatever the automation that is required, that is defined. So similarly between each and every team that was happening. So this is what happening initially when the DevOps came in picture. As time passes, that gets more evolved. All the teams are evolving more, interacting more. They are getting to get to know more about the product. Everyone, okay, they are sharing everything what they have. So due to that, you can see the maturity gets increased, the product development time or whatever the standard process was taking time, that was getting highly improved now. But if you see how nowadays how the culture or overall DevOps is happening, you can see it's everything is together. Like you will find DevOps will be there everywhere in each of the team. Okay, whatever the teams we have, you will find the DevOps is everywhere, and now everyone is working together to achieve the same goal. So this is how the revolution happened in the DevOps. Nowadays every company works like means every team you can say inside the organization or whichever working on that same product, now they are working together to achieve the same goal. We are talking about this is a typical DevOps cycle. So here you can see this is a developer who will write some lines of code and he will commit the code. So now when we commit that code, we should have some source code management tool. So there are a lot of source code management tool, but out of that Git is very popular and used in the market. So that's why I have mentioned Git here. So as soon as the developer commits that code to the Git, we'll have some Jenkins. Okay, Jenkins is a very important tool in the DevOps. Why it is very important? Because that is making sure to integrate, or it is helping us to interact with each and every component or each and every layer of your DevOps lifecycle. So here what happens, as soon as developer push the code to the Git, with the help of some Jenkins webhook mechanism, Jenkins will get to know will create one job. That job will always keep a watch on this particular Git webhook. So as soon as any code get pushed, what happens, this particular job gets triggered. So what that job will do is, that job will copy that source code on some build server. Okay, so we can say it's a build server here. So on that build server, depending on what programming language we have used, that by using that according to that we'll choose the build tool, whatever the build tool we want. So our whole product will be built here. Okay, once that product will be built, let me go back to our whiteboard. So let me put it here in a better way. So now here what will happen is, as soon as code comes to the build server will build that code with the tool that we are using. Let's take an example of Java. So we'll use the Maven tool. Maven will build the product and then it will generate a final jar file. That jar will be copied. Okay, so here this separate job are running. Okay, so that job will be controlled by the Jenkins. So Jenkins will control this job. Once build is done, the next job will copy that jar on the test server. Okay, so on that test server we are going to execute all the test cases. Once that test cases are passed, whatever the result, okay, if it is a test, that result will be informed to the developer team. So this is nothing but we call it as a continuous integration. So here, as soon as code pushed, this process will be automated. Okay, we don't need any manual intervention. Otherwise, earlier what was happening, like developer will write some code, okay, some lines of code. Let's say it is completing his writing code at the end of the day. But once end of the day he completes, QA team will not be aware that okay, this code is completed, now we need to test it, okay, or we need to build it. Okay, so build team will be before this. So build team will not be aware that okay, I need to build this code now. Okay, they will come back on the next day and they will start build. Once build is done, they will give it to the QA and they will start the testing. So here if you see the typical, the delay is happening, right? Why so? Because if we get that product code at the end of the day, nobody is going to work, that will be pushed to the next day. But here if it is automation and if some developer commits the code at the end of the day, automatically that will be built and then it will be tested, and whatever the result is there, that will be given to the, that will be mailed to all the stakeholders, okay, whether it's a QA developer or who all are there. So due to that, what will happen, as soon as the new developer comes on the next day, she will get to know that what is the status of his code, okay, whether got succeeded or failed, that he will get to know. But in our old or legacy process, that was not happening. Due to this, the overall time required to develop this is getting increased here. But here it will be faster because automatically we are getting to know. Now, the next thing that happens in the overall life cycle of the DevOps is, once, let's say your all the test cases are passed. So now here there could be two things. One could be your staging server and one could be your integration server. So why this? Because now this is, we can say nowadays we are talking about the microservice. We are talking about the microservice. Microservice means what? Okay, earlier what was happening, we are having the monolithic architecture. Okay, we are having the monolithic architecture. So what it means by monolithic means your complete application is a only single binary. Okay, everything was there in the same application. Your UI, your database, your business logic, everything was there in the same binary. Okay, so due to that, what happens is something goes wrong. Okay, let's see, your DB got failed. Okay, you need to put a really lot of efforts to identify what is the problem, whether it's a DB problem, UI problem, or your business logic problem. To identify it, okay, then do the necessary changes, and then you need to rebuild this your whole package. So that was taking a time consuming process. But in a microservice, what we do, all the independent modules of your application, we are just creating a separate microservice. Like we'll have a UI, a separate microservice, your DB my separate microservice, our business logic separate microservice. So like this, everything will be built separately. So this is nothing but, you can say, one flow of your one microservice. So like this, you can have a multiple microservice. So this is one thing, or let's say this is one feature developed by one developer. We might have another developer working on another feature of the same microservice. So in that case, what will happen? Multiple developers code will be integrated on some integration server, and again on that integration server, what we are going to do is, on that integration server, we are again going to run some test cases here. Let's say once the integration is done, okay, once the integration is done for a single microservice, what we can do, we can push that on some staging server where we can have all this complete microservices together on this staging server. But now for my application, let's say I have this 10 different microservices. So I need to make sure that I have to wait for the all the microservices. So once everything is there, okay, so on that, from that staging server, what we can do, we can start deploying our product. So once everything is there, once everything is tested, even integration is done, integration testing is successful, then finally we can put it on the staging server, and that from that staging server, what we can do, we can deploy it to the final hour deployment environment. So now this is nothing but, we call it as a continuous deployment, okay, where we are going to deploy. So now here in the deployment, depending on your microservice requirement, how many containers required. So here we can this Docker Kubernetes will come in picture. Here Docker and Kubernetes will come in picture to make sure that whatever the environment is required to deploy your application, that environment is ready. Okay, once that environment is ready, we can deploy our microservice. So this is typically what happens. Now again, to do this deployment, then do this integration, for copying this on the staging, everything will be managed by the Jenkins jobs. And just to combine all these jobs, means we need to create a pipeline, like after this job, next job will be executed. Okay, after that job, what next job should be executed. So to make sure that happen, we need to create some pipelines. Okay, we need to create some pipelines on the Jenkins. So if we just define that pipeline, okay, whatever the flow of that pipeline, according to that, all these stages will happen. Okay, and at the end, our whatever the product that we have, final product, that will be deployed in the deployed environment. So this is how a typically flow happens in our DevOps. So now here lot of tools we use. So about those tools we'll talk in a bit. But I hope everyone is clear whatever we talked for now. Okay, there are a lot of tools as well. Okay, some are not mentioned. Okay, to write a code or to commit the code, there are a lot of tools are available in the market. So everyone, depending on their product, their programming language, depending on their feasibility, we can say everyone will choose the tools. So here to write the code, depending on their programming language, people will choose the editor. Okay, or we call it as a IDE. And then for source code management, okay, the most popular tool is Git, but there are some tools like Perforce, then IBM Rational, Nexus. So these are some tools that people, depending on their, or companies depending on their feasibility, they use. But out of that, Git is very popular, so everyone should know about Git, how it works. Now the next phase of our DevOps is build and configure. This step is again depending on what programming language we are using. So nowadays this Maven supports most of the language, so Maven is very popular, but there are some tools like Gradle, and you can say those tools are also used. And for configuration, popular tools are Ansible, Puppet, Shape, Vagrant. Okay, Vagrant nowadays are not used, but out of these three configuration management tool, Ansible is nowadays very popular. Okay, people are using Shape and Puppet as well, but nowadays if you see the almost the 40% share is of the Ansible, so Ansible is very important here. Next, for testing purpose, this is again depending on your programming language. Okay, so if you are using Java, then we use like JUnit or Selenium. Okay, so that is again more of depending on your programming language. So you can see there are a lot of tools, but depending on your program language, some tools are used. Okay, so some companies may use, they're having the product on the Java, they will use the Selenium. If this SonarQube is for the testing purpose again, so it's again, you can say simply depending on your programming language, one of the tool will be chosen. Now for the release management, okay, for the release management, you can say there are a lot of tools are available, but nowadays this release management is also done by this GitLab as well. Okay, so nowadays GitLab is used. Then Jenkins itself also help us to do that. So I don't see this out of this tool, none of the tool I don't see anything is more popular, but this GitLab and Jenkins is more of use in the release phase. And in the deployment phase, okay, in the deployment phase nowadays Kubernetes is very popular along with the Docker. That is again like some people use AWS as well, just to create an environment. Some will use the VMware, vSphere. Okay, then if it is a VM based, some people will use the OpenStack as well. So this is again, you can say it's a Google GCP. So it's again depending on your use, we can choose the what type of a deployment environment we can choose. But nowadays you can see Docker and Kubernetes is very popular and it's used everywhere because it's a open source. So like this, you will find a lot of other tools as well, which we haven't mentioned here. And the main here you can see the Jenkins. Okay, Jenkins is one who is responsible to make sure the communication between all these tools or the stages will happen smoothly. So to manage that, Jenkins is very important. So these are some tools that are used. Okay, so we already talked about the life cycle, but let's just quickly see. Okay, so you can see these are some stages of your DevOps life cycle: coding, then this is from plan. Okay, plan it, code it, build, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. Okay, so there are some monitoring tools are also there. Those will help us to monitor our product. Okay, so we are talking about DevOps. So some people we call it as a DevOps cultural movement. Okay, why cultural movement? Because we have seen the revolution. Okay, so in the revolution, what we have observed is earlier people were not interacting. Means your development team will work isolated, your QA team will work isolated, and then your let's say operation team or some other team, every team they're working isolated. Okay, and they were not sharing anything with each other, and due to that, what was happening, developer were not aware like what they want or what is going to be tested by QA. Okay, means they were aware like, okay, this is the product and they will run this, but there is no special requirement was going from the QA to the dev. Due to that, people were facing not people but the developers or the QA, they are hesitating to interact with each other, as well as there is a lot of delay between the communication, and due to this whole process, the overall your product delivery was getting delayed. But now with the DevOps, now the developer QA and operation team will keep doing their work. But now the DevOps team, okay, DevOps team will continuously be in touch with all these three. So due to that, what was happening? Now everyone is aware like what is required, okay, what is required from the next team or the next stage. So this DevOps team is making sure that whatever is required to achieve the final goal, that is automated. Okay, we don't need to interact with each other, and even if it is required, so DevOps guy will make sure that all the QA requirements are reaching to the developer, and developer are making sure that all the requirement given by the DevOps guy are satisfied. So here, this is, we can say it's a cultural movement, because earlier there was no communication was happening, but nowadays a frequent communication is happening. Okay, and due to that, the overall product release is getting improved. Means earlier, if you talk about like to release one simple feature, it was taking around, let's say, 4 weeks. But with this automation, what is happening now, that same product getting delivered 1.5 week. So due to this is how the we are developing the speed, or the speed is added in our overall development process. That's why we call it as it's really a cultural movement. The next thing that we are going to talk about is Kubernetes. So we talked about the Jenkins plays a very important role, but similarly Kubernetes, okay, there are a lot of tools, but here we are going to specifically talk about Kubernetes, because Kubernetes plays very important role in this overall life cycle. Nowadays, to create all this deployment environment, or if you want to create just a simple one environment where you can just quickly build your image for your application, or just to test your application, just create an environment just to test your application. So this Kubernetes or your Docker will help us to quickly create that environment, build your application. Okay, so now let's go one by one. So here, developer will commit code in your Git repo, and once that code is committed, okay, automatically there will be one job that will copy that code, okay, on the CI server, okay, or we call it as a continuous integration server. So we can have multiple continuous integration server. Out of that, one we can use for building, one we can use for test. So that is depending on the our environment setup. Okay, there is no hard and fast rule that everything should be on the CI server. So we can have any number of CI server, and on that, for one server we can set up a build process, one server we can set up a test process. So that is depending on our requirement that we can set up. So here what will happen, as soon as the code is pushed, now we need to build it, right? We need to build that particular source code. So to build it, either we can set up a separate build server, or what we can do, we can simply start one container, and inside that container you can build your application. Once that build is done, the next thing that we need to do is, to run that application we need to create a Docker image. Okay, if you want to run it as a Docker container, what we need to do is we need to build the image for our application. So for now, to build that image, again we can use the build server to build that image. Once that image is done, we need to run that application. Okay, so to run that application we need some environment. Okay, even though it is a temporary to run the test cases, but still we need an environment. So to get that environment, Kubernetes or your Docker will quickly spin up one container, and on the inside that container we can run our application. Once that application is run, we can run some test cases on that, because now application is running somewhere. So to create this environment, we can use the Kubernetes, okay, or we can use the simple Docker containers as well. And then we can run some test cases, and depending on that test cases result, we can inform back to the developer or QA, whoever it is. Once that image is ready, okay, what we need to do is, next thing is, if you want to share this image to some other team or for some other pipeline, we can push that image to Docker repository. So there is one concept in the Docker, we call it as a Docker repository, where we can push the image. Once that image is pushed, okay, so here you can till here what we can consider is your complete product is ready, there is no test failures, okay, everything is ready, and now we want to deploy. So as soon as image get pushed on the Docker repository, so when we'll push that image on Docker repository, your application is completely running fine. So that time you can push it on the Docker repository. So if you see that, okay, now everything is fine and the image is pushed, so we need to deploy that. So once we deploy, deployment environment, there are few things that we need to consider, okay, like whether your application we need is in a highly availability, whether do we need any monitoring tool, health checkup tool. So all those we need to deploy in environment. So to deploy all those tools, we need again an environment. So that environment we can create by using Kubernetes. Okay, so you can see this is an environment where in a Kubernetes term we call it as a pod. Okay, our Docker container we call it as a pod. So that pod will be created. There will be some pod, okay, another pod that will be checking the health. So we can delete that pod as well here. Then there are some, if there is a this pod is not healthy, what we can do, we can again restart that pod. So this is now it's a overall process of Kubernetes. We'll talk more on detail about this Kubernetes in some time. Okay, I'll show with this in the environment. So this is like the complete management of your application, okay, to make sure that application is completely highly available. This Kubernetes will help us to do that. So now what I'll do is, I have one Kubernetes environment. So there I'll show you by running some application or how we can make that application highly available. So let's go to the environment. Okay, so this is one Kubernetes environment. Let me show you about it. So there is one CLI tool in Kubernetes called kubectl. So that tool I'm using. So instead of typing every time kubectl, I'll use the alias key. So to access the cluster, what we do is kubectl nodes. So what this kubectl nodes means? So this cluster means what? There are multiple machines are available. Okay, on those machines we can actually deploy our application. So right now, just for a testing purpose, what we have done is we have 3 nodes. Okay, so out of this 3 node, one is our master node and 2 are the actual node where we can deploy our application. Okay, so we call it as a worker nodes. So we have these 3 nodes. So if you want to see any pod in the Kubernetes environment, okay, so pod is just, you can say it's like a container only. Okay, but in a Kubernetes term, we call it as a pod. So if you want to see any pod, we can run the kubectl get pods command. Okay, kubectl get pods, and we'll be able to see the pods available in the cluster. Okay, so for now there is no pod available inside this cluster. That's why it is showing empty. But there are some system pods are there. So there are some namespaces are there. Okay, so NS is the short name to get the namespace. So you can see these are some namespaces available in the Kubernetes cluster. So what is namespace? Namespace is nothing but we can create some groups, and that group name is nothing but a namespace. So why we need to create groups? To isolate the group of resources. So here you can see kubectl get pods. So if you want to see any resources from a specific namespace or a specific group, you can use -n and then that group name. So there is a one group name called kubesystem, which contains all the cluster level components. So here you can see these are some cluster level components. So we will see all these components in a detail when when we see our course contents. That time I'll show you. So these are some our system related components are there which are running here. But let it be. What we'll do now, we'll create our one simple application. Okay, and we'll see how the replication or how high availability works. So for that, what I'll do, let me run one command. I'll talk about that command in a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one deployment. So the command to create a deployment is kubectl create deployment. I'll give the name as my deployment. So now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one image. So what is this particular image? Let me tell you here. So basically what happens, so if you want to create any microservices in the Kubernetes environment, or if you want to deploy any microservice in the Kubernetes environment, first thing that we need is image. Okay, so image is nothing but what happens is, now let's say this is my application. Okay, so application has some lines of code. Now this application I want to run as a container inside or a pod as a inside your Kubernetes environment. So for that, first thing that we need to do is we need to create an image of our application. So what is meant by image? Image is nothing but which contains your application, all the dependencies of your application, and the the environment that is required for your application. So we just create and bundle up all these things. This bundle is nothing but we call it as an image. Okay, so we create this image. So to create this image, what we need to do is we need to write one Docker file. Docker file is a file which contains some set of instruction. So if we have this file, by using this file, if you just do docker build command, if you run docker build command, it will create an image. So now this image we can push it on some repository. Okay, so this image we can push it on some repository. Okay, so this image we can push it on the repository, and now from that repository, okay, let's say just now we have I have shown one 3-node cluster. Okay, so one is our controller. So this is nothing but our Kubernetes cluster, and this is our worker 1, and this is our worker 2, and this is our, we can say it's a Kubernetes cluster. So when I'm going to create any application, or if you want to deploy this now, this image inside this particular Kubernetes cluster, what happens? Let's say what we do from this CLI. Okay, this CLI is nothing but the kubectl. Just now we are interact. So from here we send this request to our controller node, and this controller node actually will deploy that pod on, let's say it is deploying on here. But that is just a request we are sending, and in the request we are just mentioning this particular image name. So what this node will do, it will go on to this repository and it will pull that image here, and actual your pod will be running here by using image. Okay, so this is nothing but actual our application is running. Okay, so let me run that with an image that we are going to use a nginx. So this nginx image is already here, so that we are just going to pull it and run it. Okay, so let's go back to the environment. So that image name we need to specify here. So what I'm going to use, I'm just using the image nginx. Okay, so there is one try run command I am using. I'll explain what that command is. For now you can just ignore it, what that command is. Okay, so what this command will do is, so usually if I just don't use this particular option, what it will do, it will simply will create one deployment. Okay, that means it will deploy your application inside one of the worker node. But before deploying, I just want to see what type of YAML file it gets created. Okay, so this YAML is one configuration language that is used to write your application information. By using that information, you can actually inform to the Kubernetes cluster that, okay, this is my application. For this application, you can pull the image from this particular location and you can deploy it. So that is what we mentioned in this YAML. Okay, so let me run this. So our YAML got created. Let me open that YAML. So this is how it will typically look like. So this is an Kubernetes object, and this is our deployment name. And this replica is nothing but the how many replica of your application we want to create. So right now this is 1. So this is 1 means Kubernetes environment will make sure that at any point of time one node is running all the time. One instance of your application is running all the time. Okay, so let me run it. You will get to know. So kubectl apply -app deploy.yaml. Okay, so this will create actual resource. So if you do kubectl get pod, so here you can see your one application got created. So it is what this container creating means. Container creating means it is actually pulling that image from the repository. Okay, just we now talk like it will pull that image from that repository. So that is what it is doing. So now you can see the final status is running. So if you just do describe, okay, kubectl describe our pod, and this is a pod name. Let me just give it the pod name. Okay, so this will give like all the information. Okay, so for now just see the events. So in the event, what you can see on the controller node, there is one scheduler that will schedule this particular pod on some node. So that node is nothing but a kind worker. So on this particular node, our application got scheduled. So on that particular node, this image will be pulled from the Docker Hub. Okay, this is nothing but a registry we are talking. Once that image is pulled, container will be started. So that is what happening here. Now, in any case, let's say I have deployed a Flipkart.com website on this particular, inside this particular pod. But now there is a Flipkart sale coming in, and definitely, okay, so now typically what happens, let me give you one example here. So you must be doing some load testing, we call it as like. So let's say one application running in this particular pod. So typically what happens, let's say I'm deploying a flipkart.com website here. So there should be one calculation like, okay, this particular instance or this particular application can process 100 requests per second. Okay, 100 requests per second. And if it gets more than 100 requests per second, then there is a chance of failure of this particular application. This what happens because this application will not be processed more than 100 requests. This is the max capacity, or this is max load that it can process. So now, if let's say in a normal case, your Flipkart website is getting 100 requests, so one instance of your application is fine. But if there is a sale, in a sale there might be case like per second you are started getting 1000 requests per second. So definitely this application is not going to work properly. So out of this 1000 requests, obviously the 900 users who are sending the request, they are not going to get any response from the application. So you must have heard the news of like application is down, okay, or got crashed, something like that. So that is what will happen here. So in that case, you should be able to automatically scale your application. That means if you require like 1000 requests are coming, then obviously you should have 10 instances of your application. Kubernetes helping a automated way or a manual way as well to make sure to automatically scale your application from one instance to 10 instances. So now if you for the sale, only for the sale purpose, you can scale it from 1 to 10, so that if you have a 10 instance, obviously every instance, okay, there will be one load balancer we can set up that will make sure that requests are distributed on the all the instances. Okay, so to provide this, Kubernetes provides a automatic way or easy way to scale up your application. Okay, so let me show you that. So here you can see right now only one instance of your application is running. Okay, if I do kubectl get pod, I can see only one instance of your application. Okay, so let's say I want to scale it to 10. So how to do that? It's very simple. kubectl scale. I want to scale my deployment, my deploy that we have created just now. So there is one option called replicas. If I just give 10 here, you'll find it got scaled. And now if I go back and do kubectl get pod, you can see within a second these 10 instances of your applications are running. So what you can do this whenever there is a sale, you can just quickly say scale your application and increase the number of instances. This process you can automate as well in the Kubernetes. Okay, you can just do auto scale as well depending on the CPU utilization of your existing instance. Let's say your only one instance is running, and if your CPU and memory utilization is going, let's say above 80%, automatically Kubernetes will help us to increase the number of instances. So this can be easily done. So this is a very popular feature in Kubernetes. If you talk about another feature is, let's say now your application is running fine and you got a new feature. Okay, that means let's say there is a new UI got developed for your Flipkart website, and that you want to release now. Now earlier what was happening is, if you want to release something new, you need some downtime. Okay, you need some downtime, maybe 1 hour, 2 hour, or so whatever it is. Okay, that type of a downtime you required so that you can make sure that the new upgrade will happen smoothly and people will be start using the new UI. So to upgrade it in a Kubernetes, you don't require any downtime. Okay, in a zero downtime as well, you can upgrade your application. So like this, you will find lot of features are available in the Kubernetes, and this is Kubernetes is completely open source. You don't need to pay anything. You can simply set up your environment the way you want, and on that environment you can deploy whatever the number of application you require. So that's why Kubernetes is very popular. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar.